Today on Sugar Spun Run, I'll be showing you how to make Snickerdoodle Scones. Hey Sugar Spun bakers, Sam here, and today I am really excited to be sharing another carefully tested and perfected recipe. This recipe debuted on my blog years ago. I've given it a nice makeover for super flaky, buttery scones with a distinct Snickerdoodle flavor. I think you're going to love them. Now the first thing you want to do is get that oven preheating to 375 degrees Fahrenheit. Now my favorite way, and I think the easiest way to make scones is in a food processor. So that's what I'll be using today, but if you don't have one, make sure to check out my blog post for notes on how to make it by hand. Now in our food processor basin, we're going to combine 2 cups of all-purpose flour. We'll be adding 1/3 cup of granulated sugar. Now my basic scones are already a little bit sweet, but because these are Snickerdoodle cookie flavored ones, I've upped the sugar just a little bit. Now for that distinct Snickerdoodle flavor, you need to use cream of tartar. We'll be using 1 teaspoon, as well as a 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda, 1/4 teaspoon salt, 1/8 teaspoon ground cinnamon, and just briefly pulse everything together so the dry ingredients are completely combined. Now the key to super buttery and flaky scones is to make sure that your butter is as cold as it possibly can be. What I like to do is I will toss a stick of butter in the freezer. I'll either do it the night before I make scones, or if I forget, I'll just pop it in the freezer before I begin making them. That way it's at least colder than it would be if it was just in the fridge. I've cut the butter into 8 pieces, and I'm just going to scatter those pieces around on top of the dry ingredients. Now add your lid, and we are going to pulse everything together until that butter is well cut in and the mixture resembles coarse crumbs. All right, I want you to take a look at this. You can see there's still some butter pieces, like distinct pieces, still floating around in the crumbs. That's great, it's actually desirable. It's going to help make those scone layers really nicely defined and really tasty. Now next you need a 1/2 cup of heavy cream, and again, this should be nice and cold, but don't put that in your freezer or it will actually freeze. And we'll also add a 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla extract, and I'm just going to add the vanilla in with the cream and just give it a little bit of a swirl before I pour it over my dry ingredients. Now pulse everything together again until the dough begins to clump together. All right, you don't want to overdo it, because if you make that dough too warm, your scones aren't going to have that nice texture that I keep talking about. So let me show you what this looks like. You can see it still looks crumbly, but if I take the dough and press it together, it clings together. So we are good to move forward. Now I'm going to transfer this dough to a clean surface. I like to sprinkle just a tiny bit of flour down first. And this looks like a crumbly mess, but what we're going to do is we're just going to work it together. Now we are going to do a brief lamination, which means we're adding layers to the dough by folding it over itself, turning it 90 degrees, folding it over itself again, turning it again, folding it over itself. So you'll do this a total of 5 times. Now form this dough into a disc that's about 6 inches, a little over 6 inches in diameter. And you see how my edges are a little ragged looking? I like to kind of roll the edges, and I want to work out as much of those cracks as possible, and that's purely for aesthetic reasons. My little sister always tells me I say aesthetic wrong, so now I get really nervous whenever I use that. Now I roll this into a disc so that I can cut my scones into wedges, and I'm just going to make 8 wedges. Now when you are cutting into wedges, what you want to do is you want to press straight down with your knife and pull that knife straight back up. This is going to give your scones the most defined edges possible. If you kind of were to saw them instead, they wouldn't necessarily spread, but they would topple over themselves. They would just be a lot messier looking. We'll transfer these scones to a parchment paper lined baking sheet, and you do want to give them a little bit of room. And I like to brush them with a little bit of additional heavy cream. Now, of course, what would a Snickerdoodle scone be without a cinnamon sugar topping? So we are just going to be mixing together a tablespoon of granulated sugar and 1/2 teaspoon of ground cinnamon. Just sprinkle that mixture over your scones. Go as heavy or as light as you like. And now we'll take these over to our preheated oven, where they will need to bake for about 14 to 16 minutes. The edges should be turning a light golden brown when they're finished. And that is how you make Snickerdoodle scones at home. I think you guys are really going to love this recipe, and if you try it out, please let me know what you think. I always love hearing from you. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. I wanted to break it in the middle so you can see those buttery, flaky layers. It's good.